No, but I mean, you know, you can, without having, and I'm sure I'm like the 10,000th person to say this, but if you don't have a base of foundation of good grapes, no amount of chemistry in the cellar is going to allow you to make you know, a stellar wine. You can make an average wine, but you're not going to make a great wine. So, without supporting what happens in the vineyard or having knowledge about what's happening in the vineyard, you could really have no hope in producing something that's fantastic. So.
Okay, definition of a wine. What is your definition of a wine then?
Oh my goodness. My definition of a wine is probably a little idyllic and very different from other people. My definition of wine is a product made from love and care that is meant to be consumed with love and care. If you don't focus on the
However, wait, but that product also, it has to be made from grape juice.
oh, of course it has to be made from grape juice. Strawberries is not wine. That's I mean you can make alcohol from other things, but wine is made from grapes in my opinion. That's my opinion. Whatever right or wrong that is. But for me, wine is a love of agriculture, is a development of agriculture. Wine is the direct byproduct of farming. You know, for me, I'm in a very unique situation where I've got some viticulture training and some enology training. And I've been told by my mentors and other folks that what I do is very special in the fact that I truly love what happens from the time that we prune all the way through the time we pick, all the way through processing, punching down, racking, developing, fermenting, putting it in the bottle. That I understand all those processes is a pretty rare thing, and that's what I think wine is. I think wine is an agricultural circle of development, if you will. You know, you've got to have all those parts and pieces to make a great product. If you're not loving it in the field, you're not going to love it in the cellar. If you're not loving it in the cellar, you're not understanding what's happening in the field. And you have to, it's integral to making a good wine, of knowing where it comes from, how it starts, how it finishes, and what it takes to go from putting a plant in the ground, 3 years of growing it, pruning it, training it, loving it, picking those grapes, taking those grapes with care, and processing them in the most beneficial manner in which they were grown and in the habitat they were grown. And then putting them into a bottle. That's kind of how I feel about wine. That's too long of an answer, but
No?
that's how I feel. That's how I feel wine should be treated. That's how I feel wine should be created. I think there needs to be a science and an art blended to make a fantastic product.
All right, John. So we were talking about your experimental vineyards and how you start, first of all, looking at vineyards that are already successful, namely those in California, before you start planting yourselves. So,
Yep. Well, it generally starts with a wine research and a viticultural research with varietals that grow in similar climates to what we have, or make wines of similar attributes to what we'd like to make. For example, Sagrantino is a variety that we've been researching, reading about, both from an enology standpoint and from a viticultural standpoint. There's less than 60 acres of Sagrantino grown in all of California. We went, which we like to call, kind of a treasure hunt, if you will, and went on a treasure hunt of looking for Sagrantino in California, one to purchase grapes and one to try some wines to see if that research had any validity. We've found Sagrantino block. We'll be making Sagrantino from that block again this year. We made it last year. What is really interesting is once we do that and we've derived that we like the style of wine, that we found a nice protocol in our program for making that wine, then we start the production of grapes here at our state vineyard in Comfort, Texas. So through the history of Vineyard Branch, we've started with, the first two grapes we started with were our two signature grapes, Tannat, which is a Tintorier, and Picpoul Blanc, which is originally from the Languedoc. We have planted both of those varietals here in excess at the vineyard, as well as developed a program from our California fruit. We currently make both Texas and California Picpoul Blanc and Tannat. Other varietals in that list would be Alicante Boucher, Aglianico. I know there is people making great Aglianico in the state right now here in Texas. Charbono or Bonarda, they're synonyms of each other. Another varietal that not many people are working with or aware of. And another one that's kind of near and dear to my heart is Chassal, which is a Portuguese varietal. All of these varietals that I just mentioned, with the exception of maybe Aglianico and Alicante, they're not grown anywhere besides California. Maybe a little bit in Washington, maybe a little bit in Oregon, and very, very small quantities here if they are. And if they are, I don't know about them. But all those varietals I do have planted here at our vineyard. And that's kind of how we develop our treasure trove of varietals in our vineyard. We develop them through paper research first, out of the state research in vineyard second, enology in our cellar to see how the wines come out, if we like the style of wines, and if we like the style of wines, then we aggressively plant those varietals here in the state to see how they're doing. Now this is a multi-year project. We're only on our second vintage of the state fruit and our sixth vintage of wine. I mean, this is a project that's going to be hopefully carried on through my children's lifetime. There's no way that I could develop, in the time frame that I wanted to, what we wanted. I mean, from the time you find a fruit, decide you like it, contract it, make it, you've got 3 years, 3.5 years sometimes vested in that. And at that point, then you go and you plant that fruit. Sometimes we've decided early that there's enough research and science to validate what we want to do. So we've bumped up a couple of years here and there and planted, like Sagrantino or Charbono. Hopefully this next year if we can find some for Cervidou, which is the traditional blending grape of the Tannat.
Oh yeah, that's a Southwest grape that nobody knows.
Nobody knows. We're actually making for Cervidou out of a Tracy Hills vineyard in Tracy, California this year.
Wow.
And nobody knows about it. Mm-hmm. But it is the traditional, that's where the research and the science and the history comes in, is knowing what traditionally made great Tannats. Well, First Cervidou, which is a fantastically floral noted variety, helped with the tannin backbone of Tannat to make it a great, fantastic wine in the south of France. We want to not recreate what the French do, but we want to recreate, some history and science and ways to do that. So, hopefully here in 2 years, we'll be the next grower of First Cervidou. There's only one other vineyard in all of California I could find it in, and that's Jeff Brown's vineyard in Tracy Hills. Bob and I take painstaking efforts to drive all over that state and meet lots of people to find these obscure little varietals. But it's what we want to do, and a lot of these things we think will do well here in the state, and that's why we do it. We've got Tannat planted in the High Plains. We've got Petit Syrah planted in the High Plains, an experimental clone of that. We've got Alicante planted in the High Plains now, Alicante Boucher. We're currently here in the Hill Country. We've got a block of Chassal in the ground that was just planted this year, 2013, along right next to a block of Tannat. This next year we'll be putting in a block of Picpoul Blanc about 5 miles from us as the crow flies, here in the Hill Country as well. And I'm really pretty proud to say that, with the Tannat in particular, I know of at least 6 colleagues that are aggressively planting Tannat in the state because they think we've done a good job with it, and they think we've stumbled onto something that's consistently going to be producing grape in the state, which is really what we need.
My son-in-law John Rivenberg is working with 3 other growers in the area, new growers in the area. So we have people that are growing more Picpoul Blanc and more Tannat and more Vermentino.
Where is Bonarda from?
Well, it's originally from France, but I think it was all gone because of phylloxera killed it all. And
Which part
Bonarda,
of France?
I'm not exactly sure.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's also known as Charbonneau, and it's kind of a cult grape and wine in California. There are about 60 acres of it growing. It makes a really nice fruity, kind of a red cherry flavor wine. We planted an acre of it this year over there,
Okay.
and we have a few experimental vines that we planted here before. So we've got that one coming along as well.
Okay.
Over here we have more Malbec. This is in its third year now, and it's growing quite well. And the Alianico we talked about, like areas like Lodi in California, it grows really well. And with the red pulp as well as the red skin, you get terrific color, and you get a complexity of layers of flavor that's quite unusual. We already make some wine from it, and it's actually one of our best sellers. People can't spell it, they can't say it, but they love to drink it.
Cicella. Yeah. Portuguese, grape variety, not known anywhere in the world except in Portugal and maybe in some of the Portuguese countries.
There's probably less than 10 wineries in the United States that are making wine from this now, but we believe in it. It's going to make really good Texas wine. Then the last part of the vineyard here is our most recent planting up ahead. We have an acre each of 3 different varietals. Alicante Boucher is one. The second one is Charbonneau, we talked about earlier.
Charbonneau, okay.
Yeah. And the third one we're extremely excited about. It's called Sagrantino.
I love the Sagrantino.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
As you know, it's incredibly rare. There's about 250 acres in Montefalco in Italy.
We visited one of the guys that does the largest plantations of
Capri.
Yeah, you know Capri?
Well, Capri got last year the winery of the year in Europe. The reasons I wanted to get this varietal is because it's somewhat similar to Tannat. It's in boldness, it's maybe just a slight of a step down from Tannat, but it's also has a lot of tannins in it, which will give the red wine a lot of structure. And so we'll see how it grows here. We're making our first Sagrantino this year we found an experimental vineyard of Randall Graham's out in Tracy Hills in California, and so we're going to get about 4 or 5 tons of it this year to start experimenting with making wine.
While you wait for your
Yes.